Hello, everyone. We're back again with a new episode and on enVision Together, going to our next level of best. I am so happy to have Rose Ann Forte with us, and she has so much to share with us about her journey. And I don't want to get into it. I almost jumped in there, but I don't want to get into it. I want her to go ahead and share in her own way. But before we get there, will you please introduce yourself and help us know a little bit more about you biographically?
Yeah, I am Roseanne Forte, and I am an alcohol-free coach and author, and I try to help people change their relationship with alcohol because I realize that a lot of people get stuck and go, uh-oh, and how do I control this? And I trying to change the narrative because I think a lot of people don't seek help because there's a stigma out there, and I'm just trying to do what I can to change that and to empower people to choose a different path.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
Is
appreciate. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, was that what you wanted? That kind of summary, or a mother of four? I don't know.
What you shared is fine. Uh,
Okay.
so I'm so happy that you are willing to be so candid and transparent and come on the show and talk about this topic that a lot of people actually wrestle with having conversations about, especially if maybe they are kind of like either in the closet, maybe abusing alcohol, or they're still very functional. There's so many lines to just um I guess there's shades of gray where people are like, I don't know if it's too much or not, or I'm just glad that we're having this
Yeah.
conversation because there's people in my life that I really care about. And I think that some of the lines are blurred. And maybe they'll listen to this and say, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, or maybe they still think they're fine. But I just think it's an important conversation to have. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Love to share. And there is an area called, a lot of people are developing this narrative, gray area drinking. And because there's such a spectrum of problems, when we say I have a problem with alcohol, like people think, oh, you're drinking in the morning. I'm like, yeah, no, not unless I was on vacation, and then I might have a Bloody Mary, but
Mhm.
as you say, I was an executive, I was a leader in the church, I was the treasurer of the church, I was a Bible study group leader, spoke. This doesn't have boundaries with humanity. I have coached pastors, um, executives at companies. It has no boundaries, and that's what I'm trying to get out there. Like, if you are secretly having these conversations with, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? I can't do it. Like, I can't control it. I don't want to be an alcoholic. And I'm like, ooh, I don't like that word.
Mhm.
I know it's been a helpful word for a lot of people for a long time, so I don't want to kick anyone to the curb, but I was this person that was not going to seek help
Mhm.
because I thought I would be labeled. I thought I would have to go to meetings. I thought, all these things. And that's why I developed a different approach for people to, make it as normal as saying I got to lose 10 pounds. Like, they're
Right.
both equally kind of challenging,
And you know what? An addiction is an addiction. So if you're addicted to sugar, I mean, there's even some guilt and shame around all that. People don't want to say that out loud. But you
How
know what?
about cell phones or binge watching TV or,
Absolutely. There's so many. There really are. But I just like that we're creating a space to just open it up and make it I'm going to say risk free to go ahead and have some of these discussions without shame. And it was so important that you mentioned that you've done this work even with pastors. A lot of us are just, what we're really afraid of? Each other. What are
yeah,
people going to think?
yeah, who are the most
Yeah.
judgmental people?
Who cares
Sometimes the
what
people,
people think if you are going to get free, if your life is going to be made better? I know easier said than done, but honestly, that's just where I'm evolving to in life. I can't keep putting so much um, into what other people think. It's my life that I have to live at the end of the day.
yeah, I think the danger, especially in the church, at least for me, was feeling like, especially when there's people, and Jesus really does do that work, right? Like, oh my gosh, I found Jesus and I never wanted to do drugs again, or I never wanted to smoke again, or I never, and I'm like, well, what's wrong with me?
Mm,
And because that wasn't me, I don't think that's most people, but it does happen. And I think that's what I secretly was in my head, like, what's wrong with me? I love Jesus. I go to church. I read the Bible. I understand what it says.
you know,
Um,
along those lines, you're reminding me of a story about my mom, which I don't think she would oppose to me sharing it because she's shared it so many times herself publicly. She used to be a chain smoker. And at a certain point in her walk with God, she thought, God was telling her, you need to give it up. And, she tried for a few days and then she'd give back into it. She'd try. And this went on for probably 2 years. And
mhm.
then finally, I don't remember actually the way she explains it, but it just really came in her strongly. You need to give this up. And do you know it was that day, for whatever reason, when it seemed like what people would call a miracle. She was just free from it. Um
Yeah, and I do think it's as I've thought about it over the years, and I think I was just having this conversation with somebody. It's a little bit of a mindset. Like I used to smoke cigarettes, I used to be a chain smoker.
mhm,
And sometimes I would quit because I was forced to, and it was excruciating. It was hard. Every hour of every day was difficult. But then I'd be scared or I'd be motivated, and it was easy. And
mhm,
what was the difference between those two times? My mindset.
mhm,
And I think, yeah, and that's what I'm trying to create. So I developed a daily devotional, spending 84 consecutive weeks with God, taking a challenge, just 12 weeks, because, we need some time for neurological pathways to change or for our minds to be renewed.
mhm.
And I think it's First Timothy 4:15, practice these things so that all can see your progress. That's what we're doing. We're practicing something. And I want to develop some awareness about what it means to spend time with God every day. Oh my gosh, I feel connected. What it means to be in gratitude and realize what's good in your life as opposed to this constant narrative of beating yourself up and this and oh, I did that. Like, give yourself a break. Like, get,
Right.
clear your head. And then, productivity increases, self-confidence increases, your health increases.
It's true.
And, like I said, over 12 weeks, you're like, dang, my life is better. I like this. Right.
Yeah.
And then I tell people instead of victimizing them, I say, now you can choose. You have some evidence for both ways.
Yeah.
But you do have to, and people feel very empowered by the end, the way this process works. They're empowered. They understand they're not a victim to it. They understand the voice of the enemy.
Right.
They
So
understand what it means. Yeah,
before we
go
go
ahead.
too far into the process, I do want us to back up just a little bit because I think we
Uh-huh.
missed. While I think this was actually a wonderful way that we've gone into this conversation, I don't want us to skip over your story, your
Oh, yeah.
history. What happened that even led you to have this dependency on a
This
substance?
problem. Yeah, I started very young. I was a latchkey kid. So 13 years old, I tried my first drink, dabbled with it in high school. I ended up going to college where I'm not even sure I met anyone who didn't drink. I literally can't remember
Wow.
anybody. So it's just part of the culture, right? Part of the lie. and continued on into the workforce, and it was everywhere. And I participated everywhere.
Mhm.
And, whether it was a business lunch or a Friday night happy hour or a dinner date, it was just always a normal part. And then I met my husband in a bar, and it was part of our life. And then I started having kids and a very rocky marriage. And, I was trying to balance being a traditional wife with being an executive, with, being a mother. And I just used it all the time to manage stress. And I think that's where the problem starts stacking up for a lot of people,
Mhm.
is that I've got to get away from the stressors of life. And the problem with alcohol and sometimes other substances is it kind of actually works initially. It
Mhm.
works at calming down your nervous system, and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
you know, and you're like, do that again.
Yeah.
Because life is stressful, right?
Let me ask
And
you this. Is as you begin to peel back the onion to see, okay, what's going on with me? Did it go deeper than that? Was it just the stresses of life in the present, or were there traumatic places deeper inside?
my marriage was toxic. And so at the end I didn't even know who I was. I had lost my identity. I
Mhm.
had thought I was unlovable. Yeah, I was depressed, whereas I had never been depressed before.
Mhm.
So I think that, I was drinking because I hated my life. I'm just going to be honest. And I felt worthless and unlovable. Despite understanding God loved me, I put too much emphasis on my husband, who was not a man of God. And
And meanwhile, you were an executive. That's something to be proud of. That's something to like.
yeah, but the narrative, and we all know that, right? We all have these voices in our heads that say you're not enough.
Mhm.
And I had extra voices because it was always the voice at home
Mhm.
that made me feel I was not enough. And it was just a lot to manage. And so trauma and substance abuse go hand in hand, but it doesn't always have to be the case, right? I mean, according to the National Institutes of Health, 11.3% of the people in the United States have a problem. Now, I think that is way, way underestimated. That's of the people that they know would admit they have a
I
problem,
see. Mhm.
right? But that's 1 in 10. So if you know 20 people, two of them have a problem, you know?
I know I can think off the top of my head several people that I think have a problem, but they would never be able to admit it. If you asked them on a survey, they would say, "No, I got it under control. It's not a problem." But anytime you can't deny yourself over time, that's a problem.
It
That means
really
it,
is.
that means it has you instead of you having it.
And that's exactly how I describe it, because they'll say, people ask me, when do you know you have a problem? And I say, well, when it starts controlling you versus you controlling it.
Mhm.
And that's early, right? I went decades, or I went a decade trying to manage it as it was getting worse and worse and worse.
Mhm.
And but to answer your question, it's very, very significant when there's trauma. I have never in my life heard more people tell me, men and women,
Mhm.
that they were molested as children. Like executives, high performing people, never in my life did I imagine it was that prevalent.
Yeah.
And yet I will tell you, I have lots of people that come and say, I never drank a day in my life until 32. And then I started doing this and that, and then like it became a real big problem really fast. So it just doesn't, yeah.
In those instances, I'm just curious. When they never tried until 32 and then it became a problem, is that but somewhere in their background, like, did they have a father or mother or somebody where it was a problem? Like, is that a real thing that if you
Yes,
have people
yeah,
in the family?
genetically, it is a real thing. And the person that I'm thinking about that I had the most recent conversation with, actually, I just think I did a podcast show with her. But she said she had a Leave It to Beaver type of family, but you don't know if the generation before that had it.
Right.
So there are definitely people that are more susceptible to it because of their genealogy. And the thing, all it means is your genes can lie dormant without problems, but now you start playing with the substance and it turns a switch, you know. I
Mm,
think it's called epigenetics, you know.
mm,
And then you off you go. And it did sound that way based on her description
mhm,
that, you know, Leave It to Beaver parents, and she didn't drink till later, and then it became a huge, huge issue for her. So that was in the back of my mind. Like, I wonder if somewhere down the line there's some genetics involved. Yeah.
mhm. Okay. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that information. Now, I do want to ask you, how do you know, or what do you know about functional? I know you don't like the word alcoholics. I don't know what else to call it, or
People
substance
that are functioning with alcohol
people
problems
that
is
are
what I,
functioning
yeah.
with alcohol problems.
Um,
And
yeah, so my first, the way I stopped drinking is I went into a coaching program. It was a secular-based coaching program based on the science of changing neurological pathways, and it was very expensive. So the people in there were high performers who had money and ended up, you know, recognizing they needed a change. So what happens is a high performer will start recognizing that they're not performing at the same level. They're still performing, like they may be faking it out, but they're getting up, they're feeling terrible. It takes them 3 hours to get ahead, you know, to kind of wake up or kind of get in the mode.
mhm,
And so one of the questions I always ask people to identify if they have a problem or not is, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your productivity.
mhm,
And some people will even say it's a 7. Most people will say 5, you know, out of where, or they'll say, well, to the outside, people think I'm still operating at a 10. And I go, I understand that, but where do you think you're operating at?
mhm,
6, you know? So that's what's happening. And then what is happening with your relationships in your life? Is this affecting your relationships? Do you think you could be closer? Did you say something? Were you embarrassed? Do they think you have a problem?
mhm,
Right? And you start sneaking in,
mhm,
and people generally come because they know some aspect of their life is not going right. And especially for a high performer,
mhm,
they recognize they're not performing at their peak,
mm.
right? Other people may not know, but they know.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Um, what are the biggest hurdles that people struggle with when choosing to give up alcohol?
There's a lot of fear about whether or not they can do it because that's what substances do, addictive substances. But here's the good news that, like, your body can deal with the process an addictive substance for most people inside 2 weeks and maximum a month. You know, that's where you need rehab, and that's why 30 days you are healthy again. And so now it's just changing your neurological pathways, changing the way you think about the substance. But what are people afraid of? They're afraid of fitting in. What's going to happen to my friends?
Mm,
what's going to happen to my relationships? Uh, that was a big thing with me. And I try and teach them. Again, I have a different narrative than people are used to hearing.
Mhm.
And I try and teach them to choose something other than alcohol proudly when you're out. As a matter of fact, on my website, I have 20 flashcards of what to say when you go to a social event and you're not drinking. So you can download those. Um, but with confidence, oh, no, thank you. I'm just taking a challenge. And so far, I feel great. So I'm going to pass for tonight. And it's just this change in narrative, like, oh, I had to stop. And it was like ruining my life. Do you see what I
Right,
mean?
right. Mhm.
So I'm trying to teach people,
I
one, to,
like your phrasing around it's a challenge because we are like in America, we are like challenge crazy. You give us a challenge, everybody wants to jump in no matter how crazy it is.
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
It's always
Yeah.
the social media. We're gonna do the, I don't know, drink a bottle of ketchup challenge. I mean,
No, I hadn't even thought about it, but a
my daughter
12-week
does
challenge.
athletic challenges all the time.
Yeah, and people are, if you are training for a marathon or something, chances are you might put down the drinking and you might train for a marathon just so you don't drink as much, right? And that's what
Mm,
this is about. It's kind of swapping out things in your life that might give you true joy versus falsified joy. And the reason I think that people don't get help is because what's out there today tells them you got a problem and you're going to have to deal with this for the rest of your life.
mm,
Holy moly.
mhm,
Like that's a big black cloud or a heavy lift.
mhm, mhm,
And people are going to think twice to 10 million times before they want to say that. And I do a 12-week challenge because when I did 90 days, there was no way I thought I would quit forever. No, your
mhm,
brain is too much, it's too hard.
mhm,
But I was sufficiently and positively transformed
mm.
such that I said, yeah, it's worth staying this course. And that's what I'm trying to get. Other people can choose to drink. I just tell people it's your choice after 13, and at week 13, just give me 12 to see what's possible. Because
Mhm.
I know God has a better plan, and
Yeah.
they do too.
You know what's interesting to me is that I think we live in a society in America, or if not worldwide, maybe it's just the era we live in, where we stay so focused on you have to be strong, you have to be powerful, you have to be whatever. We don't allow ourselves to be human, and to be human, you have strengths and weaknesses. We, I think we raise even
Mm.
young people up um, thinking hide your weaknesses. And because what made me start thinking about this is I keep reflecting on you sharing that you were an executive, you deal with pastors, you went to this meeting where it was people who were financially secure. And so in a lot of aspects of their lives, they were what we would call successful. But
Exactly.
that somehow um gets drowned out of the picture in their own minds, not even just in how other people are viewing them. And it's like there's no space to be weak, if you will. Um, and be able to say something like, I'm really excelling in this part of my life, but man, I'm really drowning over here, and that be okay. That be safe to admit or to say. And I think we do that in many areas of life, not just with the topic of substance abuse.
Yeah, and that's why I like to bring in the spiritual part of it because there's an enemy
Mhm.
and at work in all of our lives without exception. And I use the successful people as an example to say exactly as you're saying, this is everywhere. This is humanity. And we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And I'll give you an example. This is perfect. I was literally thinking about this today.
Mhm.
Ever since I put down alcohol, I've just been a fearless warrior of God and filled with joy and this and that and the other thing. And lately, I'd say within 2 weeks, I have been falling victim to a narrative that is pulling me down, and it deals with the fact that I'm single. And so I'm like, oh, I don't like this victimhood
Mhm.
thing. It's just really it's tapping at my joy.
Mhm.
And today, just today, I said, you know what? He found the crack in the armor.
Mm.
This is one place where I can start cracking and making her feel bad. And they will always crack your armor, where you let them in.
Right.
And that's, I like to focus on everybody has a gift.
Yeah.
Well, especially when we get involved in a substance and we get to this point and we're like, I used to be, I felt like I was better than,
Mhm.
if only I could have. And I just give people freedom. Why not?
Mhm.
Because all those voices are the voice of God saying, you should. This is what I created you for.
Mhm.
If you always wanted to sing, start singing. If you always wanted to do woodworking, take up shop.
Yeah.
If you
Right.
always want. And so I am a big believer in just using your gifts because those are what create true joy, and you will find a way to use them for the kingdom
Mhm.
as you develop this joyful spirit. And so it's less about focusing on what's wrong and more about being fearless about moving toward what you're created for.
Mhm. And with to create it for your purpose, your passion. You know, I look forward to because we're getting to the point where we want to hear more about your approach to people getting free from these things. But I can't help but think about even when we're dealing with young people in school.
Mm,
Um, I don't think we create enough safe spaces even for learning to take place. So
yeah,
don't talk about you wouldn't be at school and you wouldn't need teachers if you already knew everything. So part of learning is struggle. You wrestle with a concept until eventually you begin to understand it and then, oh, okay, I got it. Um, but in that process, somewhere, from the beginning to the middle until you finally got it, there has to be a safe space created where you're almost expected to fall on your face and it's okay.
I love that. I really love that because that's what I talk about in inside the 12 weeks or in the program that's created called Choose Freedom. Because people are like, well, I don't know where to start. Like, just start somewhere, like start volunteering. And if it doesn't work or if the door closes, it's okay. It's the journey. Have fun with the journey. It's okay to bump into walls
Right.
because, yeah, because
Okay,
the
because
path is crooked.
exactly. Our
And you can say,
society
I
says
tried
this is
that.
not
Nah.
okay.
Yeah. I tried that. No, it didn't work. I tried that. And then you just build a lot of great stories about how you reached the top of the mountain
Yeah.
and you zigged and you zagged. And that's a far more interesting story, right? And God uses everyone of our gifts and every piece of our suffering for his glory, if you allow him to do it. Yeah.
Right, right. I guess I'm kind of just stuck on this thing where how do we just as people create those safe spaces for, I don't know, I feel like we almost need to look at failure differently.
Look at what?
Falling. I said failure, but I don't think failure
Oh,
is the
fallen.
word that I want to use, because if you fall, you can get back up. If you say failure, it has like an end to it, like there's no more hope. But I don't know. I guess I'm hoping so much for young people and even just all people that we can learn that falling is part of the process to even reaching the higher level. It's almost like,
Absolutely.
yeah, and it has to be okay. And then we won't walk with so much shame when something goes wrong or we're not operating in the way that we expect, even from ourselves. And it gives us, I think, a easier way to transition and say, okay, I found myself in this place. I don't like it. I fail, but it's okay. And now I can start turning it around without the shame and the guilt and something's wrong with me and everybody else is better than me. Because everybody else have fallen in some way. You just don't know it. Theirs is not as visible as yours.
Yeah, and I remember I used to have that voice, like, why is it okay for her to mess up and
Mhm,
not okay for me? Like, to me, it was like this most devastating, my life should be over type of event. And for them, it's like
mhm.
nothing. And I think you're right. We need to start with our children and our leaders. And look, it's tough out there. It is tough out there. And we just need more people speaking up about it, like you are and like I am. And it's okay not to be perfect. It's actually
Normal.
better. Yeah,
It's
I was.
normal not to be perfect.
There was a quote I heard. I was like, if we were all like Mother Teresa or Gandhi, or we all were as qualified or talented as Leonardo da Vinci, and there's a whole list of people. If we had all those qualities that we always think we should have, no one would like us. No one, right? Who likes perfect people? I don't.
Well, you know what's so funny? When you were mentioning all those people, even Mother Teresa, I hope people don't get mad at me, but my mind automatically goes back to she had something. She had some area where she wasn't winning at. We
A
all,
100%, 100%. But
so
she had a gift of caring, and then Leonardo da Vinci had a gift of art, and Einstein had a gift of science, right? If we just grab all those people and we think we should be patient like her, and this and that, but
that leaves no
we
room for you to be you.
exactly. You
I don't
just
have
got
to
to
be
focus on
patient
your
like
gift.
her. I have to be patient in the way God made me to be patient. And maybe there's another, well, not maybe, there's another area about me, whereas I may not have that level of patience. I have something else equally great in another area, and embracing that, because we tend to give other people more grace than we give ourselves. We'll
100%.
cover Mother Teresa's whatever issues for her because she was so great at this one thing that we all come to know about.
One thing. That's right. The one thing. Yeah, who was having like deep-seated conversations with her about all the struggles she was having? Because I know she was having struggles.
You would have to. You can't be wrapped in this flesh and not have some issue you're wrestling with. But that's not even just the point. The point is just to be you, to do you without comparison. We don't have to be Mother Teresa because God already did that well with that person. You are a unique, valuable person. Like, look at you, Rose. You are out here, you've had some success, you've turned your life around, but you didn't just stop there. You wanted to bring others into having the same opportunity. It's I don't know, it brings me to the mind of Harriet Tubman. She got her freedom, but that wasn't enough. Let me go back and get others so they can experience this freedom that I have.
Amen.
And if you're doing that, and then some voice want to come in your mind today and say something about your singleness, you tell that voice how great you are in doing this. And
Right.
there's no shame in singleness. You who says that it's a crime to be single? I'm
I know.
single.
I was like for 2 weeks. I'm like, man, this is driving me down. No, no, because life is good overall, And yeah,
And if
and
you have that desire, you can keep it before the Lord. But at the same time, the Bible does say we can get a lot more done when we're single. So it's all in how you look at it. Um, but I'm not trying to take away from your desire either,
right.
because I mean, God can do whatever he wants, but
Hmm.
he has a unique opportunity to use you in certain ways that right now, that when you meet your next partner, mate, some of that will be stifled a little bit because your lifestyle will change to include another person. Right
Yeah, and
now
that's
you're free
difficult.
to just
Yeah.
go and make a big difference, and maybe God has you doing that for a season, and then your season will change. Um but I don't know, I guess I don't want you to feel bad for 2 weeks and even more time when I actually hope in this moment I'm saying something that could even redirect your thoughts, because you're doing a lot of good. You're showing and helping other people with this book, and that shouldn't be overshadowed by some voice telling you, yeah, but you're single.
Yeah, I know. And that's a perfect example. But the thing that you're highlighting is the thing I want people to realize is that you need to be fearless with your gift and not listening to the enemy about not pursuing it.
Hmm.
If you have it in your belly that I'm supposed to do this,
Hmm.
do not let anyone stop you from doing that, pursue it.
You're right.
Because I think that's where you're going to find your joy and your purpose. And don't worry, like I said, bumping into walls along the way. Enjoy the journey of discovery.
Yeah.
Like it's a journey of discovery, not a test of perfection.
Right. And that thought is just a
Yeah.
distraction. And who knows that even by being on the very journey you're on, the very journey I'm on, that's actually the vehicle that's going to get you to that place where the singleness is no more. So it's an element
Right.
too of being about purpose and trusting God. God
You
has
bet.
our back. He knows everything we need, and he knows our desires and all of that stuff, and just staying in a place of trust.
I
So,
agree. Amen.
um, so can you tell us a little more though at this point? What is it about your approach and the systems that you use that's different from, I'm going to say, I don't know, for lack of a better term, secular approaches or other?
Yeah, there's a lot of spiritual approaches too that are doing 12 step. I think the biggest comparison is 12 step. And that is, today one of the most successful programs um, available. But there's newer science coming out. Um, and that's what I was exposed to in my coaching when I was coached. And it's how to rewire your brain. And what I noticed, because I was a student of the Bible, these were all biblical concepts they were
Mm,
teaching. And
mm.
I told my pastor this, and he goes, "Yeah, the world is good at teaching the kingdom without the king." So the difference is I combined science with God's word.
Mhm.
And I show people, like, if you wanted to see, I would recommend looking up the book, The Plans He Has for Me on Amazon, and looking at the reviews, because some people will go, well, I've been to rehab for three times, and this is amazing. Like she's combining science and God.
Mm,
And it also is this picture of God, especially for those who think that God's distant from them. It's this recognition that God loves them, that He's on this journey with them to follow me. The scripture warned them
mm,
of the trouble they would get into. So God has all these bits of wisdom that were meant because He loves us so much. So when you the devotional involves prayer, gratitude, reflection, and scripture. And all those things are one biblically sound principles and scientifically proven
mm.
to change neurological pathways, which is why the first day is, practice these things so that all may see. And 84 consecutive days with God will do a man good or a
Wow.
woman.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So, it's literally just mapped out there. Follow each day as it's described, and
So easy. Yeah.
mm, okay.
That's what people, again, I mean, of course, I didn't use this approach, but I wrote this approach
Yeah.
based on what I knew. But that is the feedback I get all the time. It's so simple. It's so
Mm,
simple. I just do it a little bit every day.
mm,
And I transform, and it's fun to see. I mean, I'm now addicted to seeing people transform. It's
That's
wonderful.
great. Have you had opportunity yet to see if these steps work with other things like I don't know, I want to lose weight or I'm addicted
Oh,
to
this is
sugar?
super big. Yeah, yeah. So I've heard that many times, like this is good for all neurological habits. And I developed a program called Choose Freedom that I'm now licensing to churches, counselors, and coaches. And I met the medical director of the American Association of Christian Counselors, and he wrote the foreword to this program. He goes, "This is amazing. This is what I teach in my mental health clinic. I'm so glad that you're making it available to everyone." And he is asking me to change it to all, he calls it life controlling behaviors. He goes, "This is applicable across the board." And I go, "I know, but I'm like, I'm a substance person. So let's start with that." So that is the plan eventually, is to
Yeah.
change these 12 core concepts that I have. And I am looking at writing another devotional for life controlling behaviors. Yeah, because it's all the same principles. And I've used it for sugar, by the way.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, I've used all the same concepts for sugar. And
But
once
a
the
lot of people say that sugar is just as addictive as alcohol or cocaine or more addictive.
not just, but it's pretty bad. It's
Mm,
pretty bad. I, you know, I think it's the same dopamine hit. Like that's what I was recognizing. It's like I can feel my brain go wee. And I was just being ridiculous with it. And it is addictive. Cigarettes are just as bad as heroin, but sugar is, yeah, it's right up there. But the good news is that, bananas, watermelon, there's some really sweet fruits that you can transition, and within, it's probably the same thing, 2 weeks to a month,
mm,
your body really recovers.
mhm.
So, but I would say it is hard because for the same reason alcohol is hard, it's everywhere. You go to church and there's the donuts, and it is, it's to me, I hate to say it because I have a problem with processed sugar. Um, I'm like, why do churches have donuts? It's so addictive. It's like, why
Yeah, it's
don't you
like the
just
donut
have
boy.
shots of tequila there, right? Like, it's just, am I
Oh, that's
right?
funny. Yeah, why do you give us this sugar? You may as well have shots of tequila.
mean, for me, it's almost the same. It was almost the same. That's how
No,
I
I
was
get it.
addicted to sugar.
Because you're
Yeah.
helping people, you're even helping kids start developing these poor habits that, and talk about it being in your genes or somehow genetically there. We're turning it on for kids, and how many
The
of the
age, yeah.
parents are already out of control with it? Um,
Obesity is, yeah, it's another real thing. We're a very unhealthy nation.
mhm.
Yeah.
So why are accountability groups an important part of this process?
Getting out of your head. Um,
Mm,
we mentioned earlier that everybody has these sabotaging thoughts that I like to call, the enemy coming in. And when you realize the thoughts are separate than you.
mhm,
In accountability groups, whether it be, I'm big on accountability. I was a Weight Watcher girl for years.
mhm,
Um, Recognizing you're not the only one gets you out of your head.
mm.
Because when you're in your head, you're just, what's wrong with you? You can't do it. They won
Think you're the only
again.
one.
Yeah, nobody think. And then when you get in a group and you're like, oh, I forget when I was in a group, I said something. It was something I said, and now I can't remember, but a guy in the group later said, I was so grateful when you said that because those were exactly my thoughts.
Mm,
And that's what happens in groups. And it's really a big burden relieved. Additionally, when you're dealing with things in your head like that, um, you learn not to trust yourself. Why bother? Just gonna fail again, right? And so a group dynamic will help you live your word again, like incorporate your word, have that accountability, right? And a coach, if you're in a coach group, that now you've got a professional or a counselor that's also guiding your thought process. So there's so many reasons that if you really want to change your way of processing information around things, accountability groups, coaches, they're an amazing investment.
wonderful. Yeah.
Changed my
And
life,
so,
that's for sure.
yeah. Um, Feeling like you're not in it alone too, because we're all in this together kind of thing. And it's making me think of different situations, whether it was even in a school setting where, oh my God, this difficult class, and you form a study group, and you're all in it together, and you're not going to let another person fall. We're going to share information. We're going to study together. We're going to make sure each of us jump over that hurdle. Um, it's making me think of that kind of teamwork. And it's even making
Yeah.
me think of it takes a village.
It does, and God created us for relationship, and that's how, being in your head, not good. Bad things happen when left, without the word
Absolutely.
of God, and yeah.
It reminds
So,
me of that saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Like, if you're left alone, just in your own thoughts, um, I don't know. It's like that other saying, we're better together, stronger together.
yeah, I like that, the devil's workshop. Ooh, that's a good one.
An idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Oh, I love that. Love that. I might use that.
No problem. It's not my saying, it's one I grew up hearing.
Okay.
So, and even if it was my saying, go for it. So, be a bridge to support someone to get to their next level best by helping them understand what you know about secretly suffering and how they no longer need to do so.
Yeah, just realize that the narrative that is happening, I've just talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, and the narrative is always the same. And that's why sometimes not sometimes, always, I'm very honest with the things that went on in my head. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. Never, nothing's ever going to change. Life isn't worth living. I mean, I've had those thoughts too.
Mhm.
And it's the substance, it's the enemy, and it can change. Um, it reminds me of the verse that when Jesus went up to the guy at the mat and he said, "Do you want to be healed?"
Mhm.
You know, there's help out there. Do you want to be healed? And
Mhm.
if you do, don't be afraid to take this step because so many people have walked it ahead of you and just really discovered something different
Mhm.
because God really does have a better plan. He
Mhm.
really does. It's a guarantee. Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And you said it's the substance, and I can't help but think it's the substance, but oftentimes it's also that other underlying thing that would, I mean, I'm no therapist, I'm no professional around all these things, but I just know that we as human beings, it's always these layers of an onion that has to be peeled
Yeah.
back. And even when you're in that group situation, although there may not be a formal therapist there, in a way, therapy is happening because everyone's just sharing their life's experience or what is it about it that makes it so hard for them. And just through talking it out, you start having an epiphany of, oh my God, I never realized these two things were related. So it's almost like the substance is playing off of something
It
else that's
is.
already
Yeah.
there.
Well, I had a lot of legitimate therapy before I quit drinking,
Mm.
and I could not solve the problem, but I didn't realize the only problem left was the substance. Because as
Mm.
soon as I quit, I called my counselor and I'm like, oh my gosh, guess what? I don't need you anymore. And I didn't realize they were so
That's funny.
intertwined. But yeah, I mean, I had 3 years every week, and I was having a hard time processing, but I was keeping it secret about the substance part. I was not sharing that with my counselor. But
Mm.
the way I looked at the world was completely different because of the substance. So you have to work on the rooted issues, like you say, and the substance has to go away. And there's a lot. Life has much to offer.
Wow. Yeah. So with my show, I always ask the same final question, which is if the audience forgets most of what we said today, what's the most important gem where you'd say to them, but please don't forget this one thing? Don't forget this one thing is so important to hold on to.
You were created with a gift that's only yours. Use it.
Mm. You were created with a gift that's only yours. Use it. And I like that. Use it, and to use it, you can't let
Use it
substances stop
fearlessly.
you. Can't let anything stop you.
Use it fearlessly.
Wonderful. Very
Yeah.
good. Now, I know that you do coaching and you have the devotional. This is the opportunity to let the audience know how they can stay in contact with you, engage with you further, potentially.
Yeah, I have lots of resources on the website, www.theplanshehasforme.com. If you buy the devotional, you get access to a private Facebook group, and I'm in there always trying to help people. I don't do coaching anymore. I coach inside Facebook if
Mm.
you come in. But I do have coaches if you want that kind of delivering a particular program. I'm licensing coaches, so I can always refer one to you. But yeah, as a start, come on in and take the challenge.
Wonderful. So take the challenge, and you have the quiz that people take, right?
I do have some kind of quiz as a free resource on my website. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And well, with that, Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I can tell that you are offering something that people can really, really use. I like that you're taking a different approach. You're considering, in a lot of ways, you're considering the whole person. And I like that you're marrying the spiritual with the scientific. And I hope that people are seeing, that's a good way to look at it. And let's see what's going on. So thank
Yeah,
you
thank
so
you.
much. Thanks for being,
Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share. I really appreciate it.
of course, it's been a great conversation.